This is sound test for Cabinet meeting on the 16th of December, starting at 5 o'clock.
Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Cabinet. We're not expecting the fire alarm to go off. If it does, then please leave everything and follow the exit signs on the Pease Hill side of the building, and exit via the Pease Hill door and assemble in St Mary's Passage. Members, when you're not speaking, then please make sure you switch off your microphone so that the live stream picks up the right person. A couple of announcements, well, one announcement really. The main one is that since we had our full council meeting and cabinet meeting where we decided to submit a local government reorganisation proposal, we have submitted it. So we now look forward to further news from the government in the new year on that and public consultation to come. But just like to say a huge thank you to all of the officers involved in that work, which was an enormous piece of work. Thank you very much. Okay, so as we start this meeting, I'd like to begin by asking all Cabinet members to introduce themselves and state their portfolio. So my name is Cameron Holloway. I'm the leader of the council. Councillor Martin Smart.
Oh, got one. Okay, apologies. Is it okay if I speak through this one, Claire? Yep. So my name is Martin Smart. I'm Councillor in King's Hedges, and my portfolio is nature, open space and city services.
I'm Councillor Simon Smith, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources.
Councillor Katie Thornborough, Cabinet Member for Planning and Transport.
Councillor Rachel Way, Deputy Leader and Councillor for West Chesterton.
Councillor Jerry Bird, Cabinet Member for Housing.
Councillor Anna Smith, Cabinet Member for Communities.
I'm Councillor Mike Todd Jones, Cabinet Member for Community Safety, Wellbeing and Tackling Homelessness.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. So the first item is apologies for absence. We've had one apology from Councillor Antoinette Nestor. Councillor Rosie Moore is not here yet, but she will be later. Any further apologies for absence? No? Okay, any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Move on to the minutes. Can members indicate if they're happy to accept the minutes as a true and accurate record of the meeting from 20th November 2025?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Fourth item is public questions. We haven't had any public questions this time, unfortunately, but we hope to have more at our next meeting in January. So on to item 5, which is the Biodiversity Strategy Mid-Term Review, and this is going to be introduced by Councillor Martin Smart.
Thank you, Chair. So today's Cabinet agenda has 3 related items on biodiversity and nature. Both biodiversity and nature more generally are very important to all of us in our day-to-day lives. I've seen the way residents and visitors alike increasingly recognise the importance of nature. A walk in the park may be easy, but the potential it holds is also essential to all of us. Recently, during COVID and afterwards, it's been recognised how our open spaces are increasingly important for both our physical and mental health. Over time, the cultural history of our relationship to nature is deep and profoundly significant within all of us, and perhaps no more so than today. In this leafy city of fine trees populating our many open spaces, there is a diverse world of nature that lives alongside us. We should be rightly proud of what we have here in Cambridge, of how we support biodiversity and how we work to share our heritage with everyone and everything, residents and visitors alike. Just observing the delight that people exhibit in seeing cows in Cambridge, taking pictures or selfies with wildflowers, mediating images around the world, a heron on Cove Fen, the Rush watercourse on Sheep's Green, delighting in a swan's nest with their cygnets, or a child's fascination at ducks and ducklings swimming in a line along the Cam. We maintain parks, nature reserves, open spaces and more. Plus there are other open spaces that the council does not manage and the many private gardens belonging to those that have one. But in the world of biodiversity, a hedgehog does not discriminate between different ownerships, and in our support for biodiversity, nor should we. For example, through our partnership with Cambridge Hedgehogs, project volunteers can cut holes in fences to connect gardens and open spaces. We also work in partnership with many other organisations, resident groups and individual residents in other areas of work to improve biodiversity. Some examples include Trees for Babies, citizen scientists working on chalk streams, Nature in Your Neighbourhood, the Happy Bee Scheme and the Butterfly Trail. All of this is really good work and we aim to achieve even more. For example, our developing partnership with the Big Chalk Initiative, together with the Cambridge Nature Network and the Greater Cambridge Chalk Stream Project, is an exciting area of endeavour, and our ambition to work with others to achieve Nature City accreditation are just 2 areas of activity for the future. To support this work, we are putting forward 3 related agenda items on biodiversity and nature, and we will lay these out in more detail now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. Okay, do Cabinet members have any particular questions or comments they would like to make on this item? So,
Obviously it's up to you, Chair, but I wonder whether perhaps the officer might deliver item 5 first and then we'll take questions on each item as we go. But if there are general questions, then that's great too.
Yeah, happy for Guy to give some comments. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is the first of 3 related items on this afternoon's agenda covering our delivered and future proposed actions for biodiversity. This paper seeks Cabinet approval to consult in early 2026 on a mid-term review of the Council's current 10-year biodiversity strategy covering 2022 to 2030. When adopted in 2022, we pledged to undertake a 5-year review to refresh actions and priorities for the remaining item of the strategy. The review has allowed officers to update the strategy to reflect new relevant legislation, such as mandatory biodiversity net gain within the planning system, and incorporate new initiatives such as the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Local Nature Recovery Strategy, which is the 3rd item on today's agenda, the draft Urban Forest Strategy, and an ambition to seek Natural England Nature City accreditation. The proposed consultation will run alongside the approved Urban Forest Strategy consultation to ensure integrated community engagement, efficient use of resources and maximise participation on these interrelated strategies. There are 4 recommendations that Cabinet approves the progression to public consultation to inform a mid-term review of the biodiversity strategy. Note that the public consultation will run alongside the approved Urban Forest Strategy public consultation. Delegate finalisation of consultation documents and proposals to the Director of City Services. And note that following the proposed consultation, the amended biodiversity strategy is on the full plan to return to Cabinet for approval in March 26, along with the Urban Forest Strategy and Climate Change Strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. Okay, any questions or comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Bird?
Is it ambitious enough, do you think?
Thanks for the question. So the strategy is ambitious in scope as it aligns with national legislation, regional priorities like the National Cambridgeshire Doubling Nature Vision, and sets a clear target for measurable diversity net gain by 2031. It embeds biodiversity across all council services, commits to enhancing local nature reserves, restoring chalk streams and achieving 20% biodiversity net gain for council-led developments. These actions go beyond compliance, aiming to create a resilient, connected nature network and integrate nature into urban planning, housing and community spaces.
Councillor Anna Smith.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Smart and Guy, for this. We've already got a biodiversity strategy, which I know has got a lot of really strong points to it. So I wonder what the difference is between this strategy and the existing strategy, and particularly where we're adding additional value here and doing things better for our city as a result.
Yep, thanks, Councillor. So this is a midterm review of the current strategy. The draft review updates legislation and initiatives and, most importantly, aligns with the statutory local nature recovery strategy. The updated national legislation under the Environment Act embedding the LNRS, that's the Local National Nature Recovery Strategy, actions into planning and service delivery. It retains the original vision, themes and objectives, but proposes new projects, designations and initiatives, including our aspiration to work with partners to achieve Nature City accreditation. The consultation will check that these objectives and projects are supported and seek additional ideas and partners to collaborate and meet the biodiversity emergency that we declared in 2019.
Might I ask a follow-up? I just wonder if you tell us a little bit more about the Nature City accreditation, because that sounds really interesting.
Yep, so this is something I've pushed for and we're still working through with officers, but it's something that it's an organisation that we can get funding for, which is useful to do work with, and a lot of the work that we do in the city is very similar to the work that's required to get this accreditation. So it will encourage us to do good work if we get this accreditation, but also it'll be saying that we're doing the right things if we get it. I know there's an argument for not going for badges of honour, but I think in this particular instance it will help us to work in a way that we've mostly been working like already, but it will give us an extra impetus, I think, as these things do, to do a bit more. So that's what I'm aiming to get from it. That's in general terms. I don't know if Guy wanted to add anything probably more useful than me after that.
I think the sort of principles behind the accreditation are around collaboration and empowerment of communities. And I think with our new structure, city services, community services working together, we're looking very much to use it as a sort of catalyst, this accreditation. It's a process rather than a final goal to reach out to new groups, new individuals to engage with nature close to their home and on their doorstep. So that's a sort of key driver for us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart and Guy. Councillor Wade.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Smart. Thank you, Chair. Given people's current struggles with cost of living, etc., why is this so important, do you think?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think the cost of living crisis is something that's of paramount importance everywhere. But the need for a healthy environment to live in is important too. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think both things can coexist. The challenging of the crisis that we have in affordability for people to live, and also the need for a healthy environment. So in terms of especially mental health, I think, as I've outlined in my intro piece, it's important that people have open space and a connection with nature to make them, hopefully, encourage them to feel that they have a place in the world. And I think that's important as much as being able to afford a meal to eat. Of course, the latter is very real, and it's often compared with heating homes or eating meals. But in my portfolio, I concentrate on nature and biodiversity, and that aspect of life, I believe, is important too.
Councillor Thornborough.
I just wanted to thank the officers, particularly for the work on the city projects which have involved residents groups and other organisations. I know the Logan's Meadow scheme, once in the early days when it got started, the residents formed the Friends of Logan's Meadow, and they've been really instrumental in helping to deliver that. And I think it makes a real difference to community cohesion to work on these wonderful, wonderful biodiversity projects. And the Chalk Stream project, I believe, is has other stakeholders like ARU, and so there's an academic background as well to this, and it's fantastic because that can feed into other projects. But also from a planning perspective, there is some, I'm hearing about some fantastic work on locally on the chalk streams where net gain of biodiversity through the planning system can go into these projects which are being prepared under the biodiversity strategy, and so that will enable both planning and the GCP projects to actually contribute to these amazing projects in the city and hopefully deliver these for the very long-term prosperity of all of those in the city who live here, all those who come in. So thank you very much.
Guy, do you want to respond?
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Simon-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that one of the objectives is to harness the wealth of local professional and amateur knowledge and experience in identifying and solving local issues. And at this point, I have to mention I'm a member of the Adams Road Bird Sanctuary Club, and they have it's an astonishing level of expertise, and I would like the consultation to ask these people how they might wish to contribute more. They do already, I mean, obviously contributing a lot already, but to be further involved and engaged with us in their work, because we fall back on their survey work and their data for the designations and the protection of these valuable spaces in the city. And I just want to acknowledge that this group of people are making a massive contribution towards nature and biodiversity and the environment in our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Todd-Jones.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Smart. Just as a matter of interest from my perspective in terms of the portfolio that includes well-being, I wonder if you could enlarge a little bit on what you think are the particular aspects of this policy in terms of well-being of our residents. And also, I just wonder, have you had much input or liaised at all with the combined authorities? I recall when I was on the Environment Communities Committee at the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority, developing a local nature strategy was one of our key agenda items, and it may be that this work ties in with some of their aspirations as well. Thank you.
Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So yes, on the latter part, that is the local nature recovery strategy, which is item 7 today, is a part of this biodiversity strategy. It's contained within it. But in terms of your first question, yes, I mean, as I outlined in my intro piece, I believe that, and I've used the word nature, biodiversity is often used in the council and in reports that we do. They're different things, but similar. And I think that when people experience nature and biodiversity within it, it helps them in their subconscious need for a connection that I think is very important, and as I say, has been noticed over COVID, but has been there forever. And I think that that is important to us all, and it's not just walking your dog in the park or picking some leaves and making a picture, but any number of things that involve us in nature. And we don't often know we're doing it, but we do, and it's important. And if it wasn't there, it would be a problem. So I really do emphasise the importance of this work. And as Councillor Smith said just now, I think the involvement of our residents is paramount in all of this, and that's part of the reason for the Nature Towns and Cities accreditation, of which a part of that is to do with working in collaboration with both organised groups, but also residents, so that they're all involved. It's bottom up, they're completely on it, you know, in terms of what we do. It's not just about us doing things to people, we do it together. So that's absolutely vital.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Bick. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Smart opened up his presentation by putting a big emphasis on the sort of the social and the health contribution of our green spaces in the city, which I thoroughly agree with. But parts of this document point up the way that there are some conflicts involved in that proposition. And as he has just been saying, biodiversity isn't totally the same thing as some of the benefits that people get from our green spaces for recreation and health. And so it talks in, I think we've got on page 32, recreational pressure is described as a threat. On page 37, similarly, on page 39, there is talk of actions to restrict the impact of recreation. Now, we live in a densely populated city, and I think we're probably going to be looking at an even more densely populated city, according to the planners. And I just want to say that any restriction on the role of the green open spaces in their role to provide recreation and social space for people really should be resisted. That is not to say that we shouldn't be having a really kind of pressing priority for biodiversity, but I'm just wondering how these two things actually come together, and whether Councillor Smart has given any thought to where else we provide the recreational space that we're going to have to restrict on our open spaces in the cause of biodiversity, because we need to have both things. I'm firmly of the view it shouldn't be either or, but something's going to have to give somewhere, or we're going to have to find either some other space for biodiversity or some other space for recreation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bick. Councillor Smart, would you like to respond?
Thanks, Councillor Bick. It's a good question. I think it's about management, essentially. I mean, I don't want to do away with your question, but it is about managing our resources so that they work for people, so that if there's pressure in terms of usage, we'll just have to manage those spaces so they work for people. Obviously, if we allow the threat, as you say, to cause a space to be spoiled, then it's not going to be so good for the next person that comes along. So it needs to work for all people. We need to manage that resource so that it can be continuously used for the degree of usage that we require of it. I think in terms of what you said to start off with about nature and biodiversity, or maybe you just said biodiversity actually, that's a technical term in my mind that I'm not so familiar with from years ago. It's only more recently I've come across it in the council, and I'm not sure that residents would really use that word as a regular thing necessarily, not all of them anyway. So it's really about the things that grow around us, the living organisms that are there, and we're supporting those because that's a good thing. That relates to, not directly, but I think it's related to our desire to be in nature, to be a part of nature. We are human, we ourselves are part of nature, but not part of the biodiversity that the council supports, obviously. But we relate to that, and if that is not there, then we do not have such a good experience, it seems to me, as human beings in the city. So I'd argue for protecting biodiversity and enhancing and improving as much as we possibly can. But I would also say that I think we too are important as human beings, in the way that I argued in council against Jean Glasberg. I seem to remember, who argued that swimming in the water was something we shouldn't test, and that people putting body lotions and suntan lotions on was a bad thing because it pollutes the water. I accept that it does pollute the water with, is it particulates of plastic or whatever? Anyway, but we exist, we are there in the environment. And so I would say to you, if I'm not going too roundabout way here, that we are, I don't know if we want to say the most important thing, but we are certainly of great importance in terms of making the city work for us. But what we want is good biodiversity. So I would argue also to create an environment where biodiversity can thrive to the extent that it will not be, the word I used was spoilt by overusage. So it is, I come back to management and balance, it seems to me, to make that work. I hope I haven't avoided your question, Councillor, because I do appreciate it's a good question. But ultimately, we can only do what we can do with what we've got. We've got a lot, but as you say, we've got a growing city. I've noted how on Jesus Green and down there by the river now, it's much more heavily used. Lots of the English foreign language students go down there now and play in the evenings in summer. And, that's all part of that development of potentially the toilets and the swimming pool down there. To make all of that work better for using it. And that's not directly related to biodiversity, but there will be a component part of that to make that space work. Because if it's got heavy usage, that will have implications to what can grow in that space. I'll stop there and let Guy, maybe, if he wants to add anything.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, as pointed out by Councillor Smart, it's very much about sort of the management planning for our sites. So we have undertaken a review of 13 of our core sites for nature, our local nature reserves, which include the commons, and both proposing potential zoning on those commons for certain activities, and also education of people using those spaces, because it's very easy for me as someone who sort of had a career in nature to understand the pressures and threats, for instance, of a dog going for a swim in a chalk stream. But for most people that would seem very natural and harmless. But our chalk stream project has identified that flea treatments have catastrophic impacts on our chalk stream invertebrates. So I think the strategy also talks very much about education as the piece here. So it's not stopping people going to these places, enjoying these places, but sort of trying to influence how they do that.
Thank you, Councillor Smart and Guy. Councillor Thornborough, then I'll come to Councillor Young.
I just think Councillor Bick mentioned about the pressure on planning, and I know that the evidence gathered for planning includes evidence on the sports facilities within the city and South Cambridgeshire, and looks with what is needed within the period within the plan. So definitely more swimming pools, more tennis courts, looking at what might need to be done with the existing sports facilities in the city. And it's a very interesting document, but I think it picks up a little bit of what you were saying about the pressure on existing sports facilities. But there's a comprehensive document about long-term planning for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thornborough. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. We first started this biodiversity strategy in 2022. So I'd quite like to ask how we feel we're doing. Page 55, we've got 13 or 14 core habitat conditions and the direction of travel. And it seemed to me most are sort of more or less even. There's a few that are worse and a few that are better. It doesn't strike me as a huge improvement. So, I'd like to hear your view as to whether you think we've done a good job so far, and whether the new biodiversity strategy or the additions that we're making now, whether they're going to improve things. And then maybe I'll also ask, we've got sort of information here about the core sites. It seems to me that the biodiversity for the city is very much concentrated in a few locations. We don't only have our big parks. We also have verges everywhere. So I was wondering, are we broadening our activities to cover those areas? And are we measuring them as well? So how are we doing, basically, is the question.
Thank you, Councillor Young. And I think your question about how we're doing shows the value of both this mid-term review and also the next item on reporting, which are really important in order to actually hold us to account for how well or not we are doing on these things. So, Councillor Smart, would you like to come in on this?
I'm going to ask Guy to answer this question, I think, as this 2022 started before I took over this portfolio, so probably he's more well positioned to answer this, I think.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question. So within the strategy, we have, as I say, looked at 13 of our core sites, because they are the largest sites within the city, and they are essentially the commons, which have had a long history of use, including grazing. And grazing is something that we want to see happening and retained within the city. But what we are experiencing, particularly with the long-term sort of shift of our summers to much drier summers, with our current numbers of stock, we're actually starting to see overgrazing of our sites. And that's a chief driver of their decline, as you've seen within the report. So the new strategy does propose a review of our grazing, with our graziers who we have licenses to graze each year, and we think that can turn around these larger sort of sites. There's three themes within the strategy. So there is the core, there is those main sort of concentrations, as you say, within the city, particularly following the rivers and the watercourses. But another theme is nature in your neighbourhood, and that very much is around working with communities on smaller spaces. So in their parks, we have a Parks Biodiversity Toolkit, and over the last 2 years, a community at St Thomas's Park have sort of really embraced that and used it to talk to all the park users as to what they would like to see in their park, and then delivered with both the officers that work with myself and the community service and housing to deliver those features. So I think there is a big push to do more on these open spaces, and also again to educate for people to do stuff in their places of work and their own gardens if they're lucky to have one. So it's not just our sites, it's a much broader sort of palette that we need to meet.
Thank you very much, Guy. Councillor Young, did you have any follow-ups to that?
No, I think that was fine. I mean, I did have another question, but it's kind of partly answered already by Councillor Thornborough, which was how this fitted in with the local plan. Yeah.
Councillor Thornborough, would you like to comment on that?
So I know that the officers, the city officers involved in trees and biodiversity have been very involved in the policies and the evidence gathering, and actually for the local plan. And actually, as we continue, the local strategies that get updated for biodiversity, but also housing or play areas that are very specific to certain areas, they could actually result in change during the course of a local plan period. So it's very much aligned.
Thank you very much. Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, Councillor Smart, is there anything further you would like to add?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, in that case, we will move to the vote. So the recommendations are that Cabinet approves the progression to public consultation to inform a mid-term review of the Cambridge City Council biodiversity strategy, notes that the public consultation will run alongside the approved urban forest strategy public consultation, delegate finalisation of consultation documents and proposals to the Director of City Services, and notes that following the proposed consultation, the amended biodiversity strategy is on the forward plan to return to Cabinet for approval in March 2026, along with the urban forest strategy and climate change strategy. Are those recommendations agreed? That is agreed. Councillor Moore would like to add a note.
No, I just wanted to double check. Do we need to declare an interest if we're part of a group that has been mentioned, not by Martin, but others? Okay, I'm a member of Birdwood Area Residents Association, working closely with the St Thomas's. That's all I just wanted to... I don't know if we need to declare those things.
Thank you for declaring that.
Oh, that's a good point, Councillor Holloway. I'm a member.
Okay, that's a couple of other people. Yes,
I'm a
Councillor
member
Smith.
of Friends of Coldham's Brook. I don't know if that is
Okay,
something
all
that we
right.
need to add.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. That is approved. We'll move to the next item. The next item, item 6, biodiversity duty reporting. So Councillor Smart's already given an overview for the last item, this item, and the next one. But Guy, if you would like to explain the specifics of this report and how it relates to the previous one.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper introduces the new statutory biodiversity reporting duty for public bodies under the Environment Act and seeks approval for the Council to publish its first report covering 2022 to 2025. The accompanying biodiversity report follows the DEFRA template to report on collaborative actions undertaken since the adoption of our biodiversity strategy in 2022 through to the end of October 2025 and fulfills the legal requirement to publish and submit a biodiversity duty report by March 2026. It is recommended that Cabinet approves the content of the draft biodiversity duty report for final document design and publication by the statutory submission deadline of the 20th of March 2026.
Thank you very much, Guy. Anyone, any comments or questions on this one? Okay, we'll move directly to the vote. So, sorry, Councillor Young.
Yeah, just quickly, the biodiversity net gain for the offset sites, how does that work? Do we have a site where we've decided to create this offset site? Do we have a sort of total amount of biodiversity that can be created there? And does it reach a point where it's then full and we have to find another one? So how does that work? And the other question is, do we have a baseline? I didn't see anything here that said we have a baseline today of, X number of biodiversity units, which we then can compare to in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Smart, would you like to start off?
Yeah, so this crosses over into planning, I think, really, and I guess that myself, Councillor Thornborough, and to a certain extent Councillor Moore as well, we all have an interest in these three items that we're delivering today, that I'm delivering. But in terms of offset, I think Councillor Thornborough probably knows more about that, but I'll defer to Guy at least, is firstly to say that we would always aim to use biodiversity on site in the city, close to any site, rather than go somewhere else. And that's a criticism of that approach. I've been to the offset site that we use for planning. It's a very big site, there's a lot of space there. It's very beautiful, it's a nice place to visit, but it's a long way from the city, so our residents don't easily get the benefit from it, if at all. So there is that, but it does help with saving the planet. There is that. So that's a factor. But if I could defer to, did you want to come back? I was just going to defer to Guy.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. It was a very mechanical question as how it works.
Yeah, I understand. So I was going to get the mechanics from Guy, hopefully, or possibly Councillor Thornborough. But I'll go to Guy first. Guy.
Thank you, Councillor. So this item's on the biodiversity duty report, which does include biodiversity net gain. So there's a section within the report, and that's been completed by our planning colleagues around, because it's one of the mandatory questions we have to answer. So there are sites within that, both private and a local authority, a county council owned habitat bank. And when you have a habitat bank, it's exactly that. You have to set a baseline, an agreed baseline, which you register with DEFRA, and then you have a certain number of units to get it to a condition, and those are commercially sort of sellable. But yet, once they are done, then that is set for 30 years of management and monitoring. So yeah, there's a certain level of biodiversity that a site is deemed to be able to achieve, and for those credits to be sold.
And the baseline, is that one calculated for the whole city as well?
So the habitat banks, that's calculated on individual banks.
Separate question.
Sorry, for the city itself, for each of our core sites, we have a baseline. So we've looked at both habitat area but also the quality. It's known as the condition. So that is what we'll be using. So it's the same system as for Habitat Bank, even if we're not actually trading the credits.
Thank you very much, Guy. And perhaps if there are further questions, you could discuss them outside the meeting and go into more detail. But thank you very much for that. Councillor Thornbury, you wanted to add something, I think?
Add something small. So there's one official site for biodiversity net gain through planning, which is the county farm. But we're really hoping that there will be more coming through soon, like Cambridge Past, Present and Future and the Wildlife Trust are considering some. But they have to be prepared so that you can absolutely guarantee that the investment will be there for 30 years. But I'm also really hoping that some of the amazing biodiversity projects in the city, maybe the chalk stream ones, can be reach the criteria where they can guarantee a 30-year investment. And it would be wonderful if the S106, through planning, we can put it into the city projects. Yeah.
Councillor Bird?
Thank you, Chair. Is this something that we are required to produce?
Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So yeah, we've got to do it by law under the Environment Act 2021. We report our actions for biodiversity as per the published guidance, and the deadline for submitted the first reporting period is March 2026.
Councillor Anna Smith.
Thank you. And as with the last one, I'm a member of the Friends of Cherrington and Colders Brook, so just to note that, because that is name-checked again in here. I think one of the things that has been a really great move forward in the last couple of years for the council is we now do always kind of report on the socioeconomic implications of something. I'm a big fan of the socioeconomic duty. It's always good to see that in here. And I know that it says here at 8.4 that this does show that there are overall positive equality impacts, but I wonder if you could just unpack for us a little bit more the kind of socio-economic implications and impacts of this piece of work.
Yes, indeed, Councillor, and I've quite enjoyed being on the Equalities panel partly for that reason. So the Equality Impact Assessment highlights that the completed and planned actions contained within the Biodiversity Duty Report are likely to have a positive socio-economic and equality impacts by improving access to high-quality green spaces. It's strongly linked to better mental and physical health, reduced stress and climate resilience. These benefits are useful for all people, but particularly significant for children, older adults, disabled people and pregnant women, as well as for residents in deprived areas and ethnic minority communities who currently face environmental inequalities. Evidence shows that greener neighbourhoods can reduce health disparities and provide the greatest marginal benefits for disadvantaged groups. So prioritising improvements in areas with low access to nature is key. And I'll just add on that, there's that well-known stat between one bit of the city and another, where some people live 10 years longer than another. And that's to be challenged. I'm not saying I'm going to make people live 10 years longer by having better biodiversity, but it doesn't do it. It helps to have a better space to live in. However, anyway, the assessment also identifies risks if projects fail to address barriers such as safety, accessibility, and cultural relevance. Research shows that women and girls often feel unsafe in poorly lit or neglected parts, and ethnic minority communities may underuse green spaces if they are not designed inclusively. To mitigate these risks, the strategy commits to accessibility audits co-designed with diverse communities.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. Okay, if there's no further comment or questions, then we'll move to the recommendations. So there's one recommendation for this item, which is to approve the content of the draft biodiversity duty report for final document design and publication by the statutory submission deadline of 20th of March 2026. Is that agreed?
Correct.
Thank you, that's agreed. Okay, on to item 7, which is the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough local nature recovery strategies. So, Guy, again, would you be able to explain what exactly this is and how it relates to the other two items we've had?
Certainly, thank you, Chair. So this is the final biodiversity-related paper this evening, and it seeks Cabinet approval to provide support for the publication and submission of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Local Nature Recovery Strategy to the Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Known as the LNRS, it's a new statutory plan as required under the 2021 Environment Act, and it provides a spatial framework for prioritising nature recovery across the county. There are 48 NNRS areas covering the whole of England, and the Secretary of State appointed responsible authorities to lead the preparation of the strategy for each area. The responsible authority for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is the Combined Authority. The Combined Authority commissioned the Cambridgeshire County Council to programme manage the production of the LNRS and established a steering group co-chaired by Natural Cambridgeshire, our local nature partnership, to guide the development of the draft strategy, supported by technical groups, contracted specialists and species experts. City Council officers have been involved with the NRS planning, production and consultations through representation on the steering group, ensuring the document meets the statutory guidance and provides an overarching strategy to coordinate collaborative action for nature recovery at scale and embeds existing initiatives such as the Cambridge Nature Network. There have been 2 public consultations held to inform the LNRS, and a summary of responses has been provided within the papers. Initial discussions have been held on how to move to partnership delivery of the strategy's priorities and actions. This has included facilitated by Natural Cambridgeshire's Policy and Planning Forum, the LNRS Steering Group, the Planning Advisory Service, and with DEFRA. It is proposed that the Combined Authority will work with supporting authorities to bring forward a delivery plan within 6 months of publication. And it's recommended today that Cabinet provide Cambridge City Council supporting authority approval for the Combined Authority to submit the final NNRS to the Secretary of State by the deadline of the 31st of December 2025. The Cabinet also notes the Combined Authority's proposals for supporting implementation and delivery of the NNRS following submission, and authorises officers to continue to represent Cambridge City Council at future LNRS steering groups or alternative forums as we collectively move towards delivery and monitoring phase of the LNRS.
Thank you very much, Guy. Are there any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chair. Why do we need a local nature recovery strategy?
Councillor Smart.
Yep, thanks, Councillor. So the production of a Cambridgeshire and Peterborough local nature recovery strategy has been mandated by national government and produced following guidance with the support from Natural England. As Guy said, there are 48 local nature recovery strategies in England, each covering a distinct region, typically aligned with county or combined authority boundaries, so this is our one. We need a local recovery strategy because it agrees across stakeholders a clear evidence-based plan to reverse biodiversity decline and restore habitats at a regional scale. It also ensures that nature recovery is integrated into land use planning, climate adaptation and community priorities, making efforts more coordinated and effective. It is envisaged that it will inform funding opportunities, including the environmental land management payments and future government grants. And just to also add, Councillor, this area is one of the most nature depleted areas in the country, unfortunately, partly due to so much arable land around us. And so it's important that we, as much as anyone, work hard to restore nature as much as we possibly can in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Councillor Thornborough.
Yes, with the local plan consultation, well, before this started, I was very interested in this work coming forward, and I asked the planning officers about how this would affect the proposed sites and also the proposed green areas that we had highlighted for, that we wanted to protect. And they were able to actually show the map that's actually being produced of the Greater Cambridge area through this local nature work, and actually put it on top or underneath or over the plans for the proposed sites. And I could see that the officers had actually done this themselves. So every site that was selected for the plan wouldn't compromise the desire to bring forward the best nature through the combined authority work. And I'm hoping that when this is finalised and signed off, that it's something that other members of the public will be able to do. But it's very high level, but it's very interesting, and I'm really pleased that it all works.
Thank you, Councillor Thornborough. Are there any further comments, questions? Councillor Moore?
I don't think it's a declaration of interest exactly, but just to say I sit on the, which was called the Sustainable Communities Committee, but now is the Growth Committee. So voted to bring it, to approve it already, to bring it here. And just to say that committee is very, what's the right word? Not concerned, but is very keen to make sure that this results in action, that it's not just a strategy that sounds nice, but doesn't make much of a difference, but that real actions are taken from this, and look forward to seeing that action plan. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Moore, and thank you for your work on that. Okay, Councillor Wade?
Same question as before, Councillor, please. Why is it important that this work goes forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So a local nature recovery strategy for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is important because it provides a coordinated plan to restore habitats and biodiversity across the region. It ensures that nature recovery is integrated into local development, and climate resilience efforts will likely dictate future government funding priorities. So I think that the work we do here in Cambridge is good. I'm sure there is good work elsewhere too, but it's good that we work with partners across the region. As I said earlier, Read the Hedgehog, biodiversity is everywhere. It doesn't, it's nothing to do with city boundaries and so on. So we need to work with others to get the best outcomes, and we really do need to get those best outcomes in this region. And with Unitary coming as well, that's another reason to be working in partnership, it seems to me. So for all sorts of reasons, but mostly to do with improving biodiversity, I think this is a good thing to do, and I hope that we can approve it today.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move to the recommendations. So, recommended that Cabinet provide Cambridge City Council supporting authority approval for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority to submit the final Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Local Nature Recovery Strategy to the Secretary of State by 31st December 2025. The second recommendation is to note the CPCA proposals for supporting implementation and delivery of the LNRS following submission. And third is to authorise officers to continue to represent Cambridge City Council as a supporting authority at future LNRS steering group or alternative forums as we collectively move towards delivery and monitoring phase of the LNRS. Is that agreed? Okay, thank you very much. That is agreed. We will now move to item 8, which is council tax reduction, April 2026 to March 2029. So, Councillor Simon Smith, could you introduce this one, please?
Thank you, Chair. So, councils are required to undertake the annual review of their working age tax, council tax reduction schemes. And the purposes are to check whether changes are needed to ensure the schemes meet the need of residents and contribute towards our corporate objectives. So I'll take the first point first, the second point first. So the scheme is essentially one of the cornerstones of the council's objective to tackle poverty and inequality and help people in greatest need. And it does that by providing council tax relief for over 9,000 of the city's poorest and most vulnerable residents. The rate of relief is linked to ability to pay, and the schemes lead to entitlement to discounted SIM and play cards and applications for taxi cards and discretionary council tax reductions. So to check whether the scheme is still meeting the needs of residents, as a consultation was carried out earlier this year, and the consulted stakeholders consulted on 4 key issues. So the first one was that should there be a limited starting point for the calculation of council tax reduction, and 75% of the respondents said they did not want to limit the starting point. And it was clear that this would lead to a significant number of small debts, the money involved being smaller than the costs of collection. The second point was, should the existing schemes for households on universal credit and households for non-universal credit continue? And nearly 2/3 of respondents said yes, retain both existing schemes, as some residents choose to have the non-universal credit scheme, although they are diminishing in numbers. The third one was, should the schemes be uprated as follows? So the first one, uprating of the universal credit scheme income bands and contribution levels by the increase in the national minimum wage. And the second was the uprate to the non-universal credit scheme allowances and premiums in accordance with the September Consumer Prices Index. And the proposals are supported by over half, and 42% of the respondents respectively. And fourthly, should the earnings disregard be equalised between the pensioner, which is a national scheme, the universal credit, and the non-universal credit schemes, which are local schemes? And 45% of respondents agreed to equalise the schemes by removing the local earnings disregard for the universal credit households. Importantly, that retains the national earnings disregard for recipients of the universal credit. So now turning to non-dependents, it's been suggested in the report that the current flat rate contribution of council tax, which will be £8.36 per week per person, with an annual uprating in accordance with September Consumer Price Index, be replaced with a flat rate of £10 per week per person, fixed for 3 years. I'm proposing, Chair, a recommendation to retain the existing flat rate scheme as that was left to a member decision or cabinet decision. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Are there any comments or questions on this? Councillor Anna Smith.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. This is something that is very close to my heart. I think it's an incredibly important thing that we have as generous as possible a scheme to support the people who need it most. So I wonder if you could just set the context a little bit for us. How does this compare with similar councils elsewhere? Are we unusual in the level of support we give? Is this actually quite normal to be giving this out?
I don't have all the data, but I am aware that some councils have a starting point of 60%, and I think that was very onerous on the poorest households in the city, and it leads to the point where it's unaffordable, it leads to indebtedness, and all the stress and mental health issues associated with that. The cost of recovery of debt, it is not it's not really a thing that works for the first point, and it's not the right thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Thornborough? Sorry, Councillor Smith, you want to
follow
come
up?
back
Do we have any comparable? I don't know if Jodie is able to jump in on here. Any comparable data with other cities, for example?
Naomi, are you able to help with that?
Hello, everybody. Naomi Armstrong, and I'm the benefit manager. I haven't got absolute figures, but just under half of councils are now looking at having the same scheme as us. More and more councils are moving towards the City Council's position. And I know that South Cambridgeshire District Council have just finished their consultation and are looking to have a very similar scheme to us. So we are the benchmark, definitely.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Naomi. Councillor Thornborough.
Councillor Smith, could you just explain about the taxi cards and whether we can continue to support these at the stage? Because I know when Councillor Anna Smith was Deputy Leader of the Combined Authority, she led in the Combined Authority taking over these bus subsidies that we continued, and also commitment to cover the dial-a-ride service, which I'm very grateful for her to do that, and I'm grateful to the Combined Authority for the continued work in those areas. I really think they should also take over the taxi card provision, because it is very important to the most vulnerable inner city. So can you just, are we currently able to continue that until and if the Combined Authority take it on? Thanks.
I think this was a commitment made by the previous mayor. And I think it's been, and the mayor has undertaken a budget review. And I'm sorry, I'm uncertain as to what the mayor has decided to do, but I think maybe people in the chamber who know more up to date with this. But I certainly, anybody? No,
At the moment, the Combined Authority are not covering the taxi cards. Yeah.
All right. Well, in which case then we need to revisit that budget to make sure that there's continuity for the people that use that service. Okay.
Thank you very much. Councillor Porra, would you like to come in on this?
It's just to note, Chair, that obviously this sits under the scrutiny committee that Councillor Gawthorpe and I chair, and that we did discuss this with Jodie and colleagues, and we didn't call in because we felt that the scrutiny tonight would be sufficient and obviously broadly supportive of the aims, as people have said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porra. Okay, if no further comments or questions, Councillor Smith, is there anything further you would like to say before we go to a vote?
The first thing I'd like to say is to thank Naomi Armstrong, who leads on this, for an incredible amount of work that's gone into it. To be in a position to say that we're the benchmark in this service is quite a commendable thing for the council, and the way in which the benefits system works is incredibly efficient and effective, and that really is helping people. You know, this is a backroom activity, but it's actually having really serious frontline impacts for vulnerable people. And I think I just wanted to record my deep appreciation for this work on behalf of the community. Chair, would you like to read the fifth recommendation before we come to the other four? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So on page 149 of your agenda packs are the 4 recommendations, and then there's a 5th one which Councillor Smith referred to in relation to non-dependence. So that 5th one is that where the household is on universal credit, to retain a flat rate scheme for non-dependence of £8.36 for 2026-27, with an annual uprating in accordance with the September Consumer Price Index and annually increased by September CPI thereafter. So just to clarify that, as Councillor Smith has said, that's a continuation of what we're currently doing, and it's less than it would have been under the proposal that was in that paper. So non-dependents who receive disability income or pension credit or a war pension or armed forces independent payment, or where the charge payer and or partner have a disability or receive a carer's benefit, and will not have a non-dependent deduction. So there are exemptions for those groups, just to clarify. Councillor Thornborough.
Is that number 5 somewhere in the papers, but not under
No.
under 1.1?
No, it's not. That's what I've read it out now, and that's why Councillor Smith referred to it in his introduction. It's, if you look at page 154 of your papers, there's a reference to non-dependents, and there is a potential arrangement for them. It says a suggestion is that this is £10 per person per week, but actually we're looking to remain as we are, which is just increasing by CPI each year, which would be less than that would be less costly to individuals than the £10 per person, which is suggested in the paper. Councillor Moore.
So just to confirm, the bit under non-dependence is essentially what you've read out that we're agreeing to?
It's, yes, it's essentially amending what is at page 154, 155.
Okay.
Councillor Anna Smith.
So just to check if I've got this right, so I'm looking at the non-dependent section here, which on my papers is page 155, but might not be if you're looking at it in other formats. It's currently £8.05. The figure that you read out, which was £8.26, was that correct, Chair?
836.
836 is what that would be this year if we just carried on this. So in effect, what we're saying is we would do what we're doing this year already next year, and then we basically continue that. So that's, as far as I just want to be sure that that is better than the £10 per person per week flat that's in here. So actually that's a good thing to have, basically.
Yes, that's correct. Councillor Smith, would you like to clarify the situation?
The £8.05 is for the current financial year 25-26. The one I referred to, 836, is includes for 26-27, and then there would be the CPI increase, but it's never going to get to £10 within 3 years unless we have hyperinflation. But we've got a great chancellor, so that's not going to happen. So, so this is much better for the non-dependents than the £10 proposal from the officers.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Obviously, wouldn't want to vote anything through that was worse than what was in the papers, but if it's better, clearly supportive.
Okay, thank you very much. Are we happy to approve the recommendations in that case? Okay, that is approved. Thank you very much. Okay, on to the final item, which is item 9, the quarterly performance report. So this quarterly performance report is part of our efforts to make sure we're analysing council performance, that we're aware of it, we're making it available publicly and ensuring we're, as a council, providing really high quality services and we're providing value for money for our residents, but at the same time being aware of what risks may be either ongoing at the moment or on the horizon, so that we can take action to mitigate those risks. So in this quarterly report, I'll hand over to Jane in a bit to talk you through it, but it's going to be coming quarterly, as it says. It's split into general activities and then our social landlord function, and it highlights some of the key areas of work for the council. So just a couple of highlights. First of all, we've got our 99.9% of bins collected on schedule, which is a fantastic achievement, really not to be taken for granted. 97.6% of food businesses broadly compliant. Applicants in housing need down 4.3% in the last quarter, which is really positive, and hope to see that trend continuing. But there are also some risks that you will have noted and some issues, and you've probably noted a few, particularly in relation to our social landlord function. So areas such as the stock condition surveys, the fire risk remedial actions, and the issues relating to our data management systems. But the important thing is that we are being transparent about those risks, and we also have in place plans to address those. So Jane, would you like to give a bit more information on the report and what you hope this will achieve and show?
Thank you, Chair. This is the first of what will be a regular quarterly report. It's designed to provide the basis for effective kind of strategic oversight, considered decision making, particularly for Cabinet, opportunity to consider areas for scrutiny for our scrutiny chairs and its good to see both of you here this evening, and to provide public visibility on the performance of the council. It is, as I said, the first, and I expect that the kind of continuing value will build as we have the quarterly reports coming quarter on quarter, so that you can see and monitor how well we are doing. Are we, where we've identified risks and issues, are they improving, are they not, to try and make that as visible and as transparent as possible. I'd like to thank members who took part in workshops earlier in the autumn. That really did help shape the design, and particularly to reflect on the feedback on language. And I hope you can see the work that's gone into trying to make the language and the way that this report is set out as straightforward and as transparent as possible. Without being flippant, this was a challenge to some of our staff who'd not really been, tasked to think in that way before, and I hope that that's made this information as easy as it can be to digest. And finally, as it says in the report, there will be an early full review. This is the first time we've done this, and I think we've made it is a huge shift. We've not done public performance reporting before, but we've actually moved to that integrated performance, finance and risk, which is very rapidly becoming what's considered good practice. We've made quite a leap to do that, so I think it's good to come back for an early review after the first three, which will mean that we start Q1 next year with an updated, revised model, and I would be looking to run member workshops very similar to the ones we did in October to get your views. I'm not going to talk to the detail of the report. I'm presenting it because it's my team that's pulled all of the data together and put it in front of you. I'm happy to take technical questions, and where I can answer them, I will, and if not, I can take them back to colleagues, and I will leave the debate on the content to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your work on this, Jane, and I think it will be a really valuable resource. Okay, any comments or questions? Councillor Thornborough.
Jane, I think this is a really good report, and it's fantastic to have this, and I look forward to the ones going forward, and we can see how we change from report to report. I need to apologise because on page 211 there is a baseline description for the time to validate, the time to determine validated household applications, and in the italics underneath there is an error in one word, and it says this is the number of weeks Greater Cambridge Planning Service takes to validate applications, but it's to determine applications. But I am very pleased to see that we continue to improve, and now it's come down to almost, the average is almost 7 weeks, where the expectation is 8 weeks, and that's an average. So sometimes some of them are under 7 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thornborough, for noting that. Councillor Wade?
Yes, just a note. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jane. And I really do welcome this report. It's an effective oversight going forward of the management of our performance as a council, as you say. And I really welcome what's written on page 209, which talks about tenants' experiences and how well prepared and how much work we've done around AWAB's law. And also, I'm really, really pleased to acknowledge the pipeline for maintenance and compliance contracts, which has come through now, because I think it's certainly the way forward. And also the last positive comment, the regulator noting that the council's respectful, fair and positive culture towards its tenants. I really do think that is something that we should be proud of. And it also goes on to say the council provides an effective, efficient and timely repair service, which also I think is worth noting. So thank you.
Councillor Smart.
Thanks, Jane. I appreciate that we'll be able to look at these as we go forward and compare them, which is probably the best use of them. But if you don't mind, Chair, I'd just like to briefly draw attention to key achievements in the period on page 3 and 4, which I think are exceptionally good. For any council, the Park Street development delivered on time, not on budget, but under budget by £16.8 million, which was an exceptional achievement, I think, by officers who delivered that project with others. The higher than budgeted income from our car parks, which again is a great achievement, I suppose partly due to residents paying the parking fees, but we have achieved that income and we need that money now if ever we needed it in these times of squeezed budgets. So our car park income is very important. The new operations hub, which I visited myself, which is a great building, much better for staff to use and to deliver services from. And finally, the way that I didn't know this had happened, but we've reached agreement with National Highways to get the money they owe us. So that adds up to 2.3 million overall. And all those figures that come into our bank accounts mean that we are able to deliver services for our residents in this city more easily going forward. And so those are all really good things.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Jane, for this, all of your work on this, well, and officers all across the council. I welcome you mentioning the bin collection rates, but just to flag, obviously it'll be dependent on us councillors when we scrutinise these issues to also think about the background. So it's very positive that currently we're at 99.9% of collections, despite all of the roadworks that we see all around the city. However, we currently collect 3 bins per household every fortnight, and this time next year we'll be collecting 5 bins per household every fortnight, and there'll be a new service brought in with the food waste. So it might impact those excellent figures, but we hope to be back up again very soon after. And I'd just like to mention on the food licensing, that is our environmental health teams, not just going out and doing the inspections, but working with food businesses across the city and supporting them to run safely and promoting excellent food and health and safety practices. So not just keeping our residents safe, but supporting local businesses, and really welcome those results in here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Anna Smith.
Thank you. I mean, as with everyone else, I really welcome this. I think it's very clear to work through, some really helpful stats there. There was one thing just in terms, and apologies I haven't raised this before, because it was only when I opened it again in this light that I really noticed this. When you look at the amber, the way that amber is often used as colour coding is to say we kind of almost make the target but not quite. And I appreciate what we're doing here is we've said we've met the baseline but not the stretch. I actually wonder if possibly you could have 2 different shades of green or something, that it would, maybe that's a bit too tricky, but it just, when it jumps out at you, the immediate thing is, oh, we haven't met that, we haven't met that, and actually we've met the baseline. And I think whilst we want to go for the stretch, it just potentially an overview doesn't quite look at maybe as we'd hope. I think it's incredibly useful. You know what I'm always going on about, which I will again, is this helps us to evaluate impact, but it isn't in itself all the things we need to evaluate impact. I know there's some great work going on in teams talking about impact measurement. The communities team, for example, is doing some really exciting work there. And I think that's something we need to continue to work on as a whole city, so we can really think, what is it we want to see? What does good look like for our city? And how can we really evaluate those complex impacts that don't necessarily come along on a nice, clean, numerical score? So I know that's being worked on, but I just want to put that marker in there that I think that remains the gold standard for us as we move past. But thank you, because this is excellent work and really useful.
Thank you very much for that feedback, Councillor Smith. Councillor Bick.
Chair, yes, I'd like to add my name to those who appreciate this report. I think it really helps, everyone, not just the Cabinet, all members of the Council to understand what's going on, how the Council's doing, and obviously congratulations to those responsible for the things that have gone well. I've got some feedback still about the actual process and so forth, but I think probably it's more appropriate to give that behind the scenes, which is in the spirit of improving the quality still further. I have two questions about the content of the report, what the report appears to show us. On the financial side, we are looking at a forecast for year end of an overspend of 1.7 million. And of course, the benefit of getting that view at the middle of the year is, as the report says, is that it enables us to do something about that. It talks about actions that will be put in hand to try and reduce that gap by year end. So my first question is, what actions can we expect to be taken in order to narrow that gap by year end? And also, what proportion of that 1.7 million consists of non-recurring items which may be unfortunate but not necessarily endemic in the system for the future? The second question is about the a bit of granular detail. The grounds maintenance and street cleaning team is a contributor to that overspend, and one of the elements that is mentioned as contributing to that from that team is an overspend on agency fees, staff agency fees. And I wonder whether someone could help us understand, after a really expensive restructuring exercise and redesign exercise, which was completed in the early part of the financial year, why are we looking at an overspend in agency fees? Isn't that something we should have said goodbye to through this restructuring exercise?
Thank you very much, Councillor Bick. On that second one, I think if you look at the detail, there was an issue with sick leave, so that is not something we can always avoid, unfortunately, when people have long-term sick leave. But if Councillor Smart would like to come in on that question, and then Councillor Smith on the first question about the overspend of 1.7 million. Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I don't know what page you're talking about, but in general, I'll answer in general. I can get more specific in a minute if you want. I understand that we've overspent on that item for years, or, you know, it's cost more than we expected for years, and we're just, the most recent figures I've seen are that we're now correcting that. The other thing that could be a factor is I know that the removal of weeds from the streets has been organised and scheduled, and we're behind with some of that. We have been. And so what was planned was that we would put other workers onto those shifts to do more work to catch up, because it was a team of 5 that was going around doing that work, but that we would add in more staff time to that. But that might not account for the sort of quantity of money that you're talking about, I'm not sure. Those are the only two things I could think about off the top of my head, Councillor.
Thank you very much. I think the other thing to note is that part of this additional cost is in relation to the increases in the national living wage, which is a positive, other than it's still a cost, of course, but overall that is a positive thing. Councillor Bird, did you say you wanted to add something?
No, Chair, you just jumped in and said what I was going to say.
Sorry.
That's all right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, on the item, on the first question from Councillor Bick relating to in-year overspend.
Yes, okay. So one of the significant ones there is about the rental stream on Lions Yard. We have a geared ground rent, and due to the change in the way in which people shop, bricks and mortar retail is the demand is falling off, and therefore the rents and the rents are linked to footfall, and so our share of the rents is falling. But what happened was that the leaseholder continued to pay us at the old level and has now just decided to tell us that they weren't making as much money, and there is a one-off £700,000 hit on the council because of that accumulated sum they've overpaid us. But as we progress, the income will fall. I think it's to the tune of £400,000 a year because of the change in the rental income. So that's that one. The other one relates to housing benefit, and basically what that means is that the providers of people who provide for homelessness are not registered providers, and as a result we cannot reclaim the full subsidy. So we are now seeking advice on how we can support those providers to become registered providers so that we can reclaim the full subsidy. We think it could take some months to do that, and we will start with the two main providers, and they probably account for about 80% of that sum. And we will be talking to them, and we'll be supporting them and giving very significant priority to helping them to do that. I think I've covered the most significant ones. Again, the crematorium, reduced income. We've heard before that there's been it's almost, I say, radical change in the market, new providers locally, and online direct cremation services, as well as the impact of cost of living, people, families wanting lower cost options. But I think we're now getting to a level which can be sustained. But we will be looking at the options for the crematorium, and you'll see when the budget comes forward, we will be recommending some capital investment in order to maintain the fabric and the mourners' experience as best we can with new facilities. So I think that's where we're at with the overspends. It's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? Because it's, in some sense, a reduction in income as well. But you can be assured we're all over the detail and doing our level best to protect our services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor Moore, you had your hand up. Was it in relation to this item?
Well, it was just to talk about another of the items mentioned in there, which is the garage, which again, as has been said, is not exactly an overspend, it's an income not realised. But as it says in the information, this is in part due to time spent at the garage by the workers keeping our own fleet running. So this is only looking at the finances, there's no statistics, unfortunately, about how many of our own vehicles have been kept on the road. And as we move to replacing our fleet with new vehicles, then that figure will reduce, and the engineers will be able to spend more time on jobs that create income. some of the vehicle replacements, the fleet replacements have been delayed. For example, by the Wren project was delayed. That's the solar farm out at Waterbeach, but that is now all on track. And with the move to the new operations hub, we will be able to, if budgets allow, replace some of our fleet with electric vehicles. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Moore. Councillor Bick, I think you wanted to come back.
Yeah, I just wanted to look for an answer to. I appreciate the explanations of the forecast and then the 1.7 million. But what I was also looking for was what are the actions that are spoken of in here? What sort of things should we expect now that are going to try and close that gap by the end of this year?
Thank you. Well, I think Councillor Smith did refer to some of those, for example, in relation to the registered providers or in relation to the crematorium, but there will also be other work that we will be bringing forward, several items in the budget, which we may not be revealing right now. Councillor Smith, anything to add?
Well, I thought I answered the question. Which element were you?
You explained a number of the reasons for the shortfall, projected shortfall, and you talked about how actions may be put in place, like, for example, things put in the budget. But I was asking about measures that are likely to be taken in order to reduce the 1.7 shortfall within this budget year, because that's what's referred to in the report. Maybe the Chief Finance Officer would help.
Okay, well, I can deal with it. So the £700,000 is a one-off. Okay, we can't deal, we can't get them to change their mind, not want their money back. And then, then there's the 400,000, which is again is a reality. We can't really do anything about that. I've explained to you about the 600,000 on the housing benefit, which is it's going to take a few months. We don't know exactly how long, but I would like to get it done within the next financial year, but I understand that it could be longer than that. But as I said, we will be making every effort to help those organisations become registered providers, because it's a serious hit for us. And I did say that we are looking at the crematorium, and some options paper is going to have to come forward in due course. So I don't think I can say that out of that mix of things there's anything we can do now between now and the end of this financial year to deal with those overspends. I think in relation to the issue around is the cleaning contracts referred to there. This is actually one of the issues that's occurred is that because we took out the underspends from the budget last time round, we've actually now got, we've taken the slack out the system, if you see what I mean. And so what's happened now is we've exposed these recurring overspends that now have to be dealt with. It's always been covered by underspends, and now these are surfacing, and we're now we're going to deal with those, and we're going to deal with them by actually recognising the reality that they're not overspends, they just haven't been properly budgeted for. So I know what you're getting at. I know what you're trying to say. We're not in control of a budget, and well, no, you're not. Okay. Well, God forbid that we are, because we've got an outstanding finance team.
Councillor Smith, I might step in at this point to hand over to Jodie.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
I'm just trying to make Councillor Bick happy.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want him too happy. Jodie.
He's smiling anyway.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'd just add to what Councillor Smith's set out, and I would totally agree. I think certainly over the last 12 to 18 months, as a leadership team of officers, we've certainly really been trying hard to tighten up some of our financial management practices. The Councillor Smith referred to taking some of the slack out. Obviously, we delivered significant recurring savings as part of last year's budget setting process, and I think there was, that has made people have to think a lot harder about managing their budgets in a way potentially that hasn't always been the case, and has surfaced some of these sort of in-year overspends. In addition to the specific actions that Councillor Smith referenced, clearly we are continuing those conversations with budget holders on a regular basis. We've implemented a business partnering approach to our financial management within the organisation. So there are business partners within the finance team having regular conversations with budget managers and really just encouraging people to identify opportunities for in-year savings and additional income where necessary. Not necessarily in the specific items referenced in this report, but just a general culture that the budget isn't necessarily there to be spent. If you don't have to spend it all, don't spend it all. And we're having those conversations and looking for opportunities to claw some of this back. I think it's also really important just to flag the context on page 213. We're talking here about an overspend against budget, but we had actually budgeted a general fund surplus of £3.4 million this year. So the overspend means that the 3.4 million surplus is now forecast to be 1.7, but it is still a surplus. So we are, even with the overspend, we are still forecasting the general fund balance to increase this year, which I think is a position that not many councils are in.
Thank you very much, Jodie. Councillor Wade.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the report. And just to comment and to say thank you to everybody who's not mentioned in this report, who've come in to work and delivered for residents day in, day out, despite all the changes, despite all the long-term sick, which happens in every area, as we know. But there's been a lot of change and there's been a lot to get used to and to adjust to. And despite that, people are coming in every day to do an excellent job because they take pride in working for City Council and they want to do a good job for residents. And that's across all the teams, and I'd just like to pay tribute to those people who are obviously not mentioned individually in here, but it reflects all their hard work, very much so. And the new operational hub is a good reflection of how we are investing in the people that make this City Council work for residents. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wade. Councillor Porrer, this is your Scrutiny Committee's area of work. Did you have anything?
Well, the full budget will be coming forward. We've been working with Councillor Gawthorpe and myself with Jane Wilson and her team, because obviously we were part of the original workshops with Cabinet and others, and it is on our work plan to come back probably next year, once we've had a couple more cycles, so that we can review before the next Q1 to make sure that this is providing the information that I think we all collectively hope it will. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Young, anything from your areas of work?
Nothing from me today, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Diell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I guess I'd initially echo the comments really around the value of this report. I think there's an old line about sunlight being the best disinfectant. And it's good for local democracy that, along with sort of areas that we're doing well in, we can also see areas for improvement. And that, unfortunately, does bring us on to, the elements of this report that look at the HRA and our council homes, where actually the financial position does look very challenging. So, I think we were talking about having been forecasting a surplus and continue to do that in the general fund. That is not the case for the HRA. So we're now looking at the HRA will overspend by 2.2 million, and that variance being sort of largely driven by the day-to-day repairs on damp, condensation and mould works. I think the thing is we did see this coming. There have been several previous attempts to amend the HRA budget for exactly this kind of pressure. And there has been warnings from opposition parties that the provisions that were being made were not sufficient. I know amendments were brought by both Councillor Martinelli and Councillor Porra on exactly this point. So now, instead of the planned 1 million contribution to HRA reserves, we're forecasting the deficit that was actually going to reduce those by 1 million. And there's a risk that we're burning through a financial buffer because we failed to budget realistically for the condition of our stock. Whilst also many of our residents have seemingly been facing quite poorly maintained accommodation. So, yeah, that's the financials. I think it was also noted around the sort of the RAG ratings. And I think if you look at Appendix 2, you can see that 5 of 7 of the flags around housing are currently red. That includes missing our targets on the timely completion of emergency repairs and also delays on the time to relet properties, which by my sort of estimate, I think means there'll be 10 more council homes there or thereabouts still sitting empty this Christmas, which is, you know, an impact on people. So I guess the question is to the Executive Council of Housing in why, you know, why under their watch we're overspending by this amount and what they're doing to, you know, respond to this so that our tenants get the service they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dalziel. I just note that in the last couple of years, the amendments that you refer to, that's the Liberal Democrats brought forward, usually we're talking about a couple of officers in addition, or 2 or 3 usually. We're looking at, for the next budget, at something more significant and strategic that will hopefully put some investment into the damp condensation and mould work, because we recognise that that is a very important area of work. Councillor Bird, would you like to give some further comments?
I will do, and then I'll pass on to Jodie, if that's okay. First of all, the damp and mould, we are working very, very hard to get this sorted out. As you know, when something's in the press, everybody jumps on it and they're phoning tenants up and saying, oh, if you let me sort out your case, I can get you some extra money, which has been happening. I've even had a phone call. So that's one problem. The other problem is that we needed some more surveyors, which we've put in for the budget, which will help us a great deal. The guys are doing their best to get through it. And again, it's not just that our guys are not getting there quick enough. Sometimes it's the way the tenant lives, and we have to educate them more. And that's what I'm trying to do. So in Cambridge Matters, we put it in there. It's winter time, it will go in there again, and it will go in there again to carry on. So everybody gets in their mind the best way to get rid of damp. The other thing was, sorry, I missed the other one you mentioned, sorry.
Well, I did mention specifically the turnaround on relets. So we are about 11 days late on that. And as I say, that has an impact on the number of houses that are available.
Okay, we've had another problem there because we've had staff sickness and long-term sickness as well. And we're getting more staff now for that. The big delay in voids at the moment is, before we used to be able to check the house before the tenant left, inform the tenant what the tenant had to repair, and then check it before the tenant handed the keys back. And at the moment, there's been delays with that. And we're trying our hardest to get that sorted out, to make sure that an officer goes and sees that tenant's home before they go. I'm upset about the voids. I'm always going on about the voids to the officers because I hate to see a house empty as well. The big problem, like I say, is they can do the work in 11.5 days. The extra days is because he's getting it, trying to re-let it, find somebody who wants it. And don't forget, we've had a quick turnaround because we've had new homes built, tenants have been moving out into their new properties. So that puts us behind as well. So there's a lot to take into account of why there's a few houses empty. But we are working on it. Be reassured, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Jodie, would you like to come in on the finances of the HRA?
Yeah, I guess on the finances, I would just comment that what we're seeing at this council is not unusual. When you look across the national picture, there has been quite significant regulatory change over the past couple of years. For example, the recent introduction of Arab's Law, and that has increased costs, particularly in the area of damp, condensation and mould, but it's also, I think it's fair to say, put a spotlight on some wider sort of housing repairs issues as well, and has added cost across the board. In terms of the overspend, the sort of the main reasons set out on page 222, around about 50% of the gross overspend is actually stuff that is really one-off or will fall away. You know, we have additional wake and watch costs at the moment. We've had some specific issues in some of our properties, specific incidents that have happened during the year that have needed to be dealt with, and some historic issues that we're dealing with. So around about 50% of that additional cost will fall away naturally anyway. We are currently going through a process. We've engaged some external consultants to help us to review the 30-year HRA business plan with a view to, during the current budget setting round, essentially update the budgets to where they should be in terms of what we need to be spending in terms of maintenance, repairs and maintenance on our existing stock, to make sure that we're maintaining them at the correct level, and then to see what that does to kind of what's left over for longer term capital investment. I think it's really important again to highlight the context. We have fundamentally a strong financially sustainable HRA. The way the HRA works, it's a statutory ring fence, so all of the money that's collected into the HRA, which mainly comes from tenant rents and service charges, can only be spent on the delivery of council housing within the city. It can't be spent on other services. That tenant money is protected for use on housing. And essentially the way that our HRA model works is we do generate a significant operating surplus, and then we are using that surplus for capital investment, which will be redevelopment of housing, development of new build housing within the city and the ambitious New Homes programme, and also some net zero measures and retrofitting of some of our stock. So if you look at the table on page 222, you'll see that even after the overspend, we're forecasting a net operating surplus after interest costs of around about £10 million this year, which will be money that's available for capital investment. So again, you know, fundamentally, the HRA is sustainable. It is delivering a significant operating surplus. The challenge is really realigning those budgets to where they should be, and then assessing what impact, if any, that might have on the longer term capital programme. And those papers will be coming through as part of the budget setting round through to scrutiny in January and then on to Cabinet in February.
Thank you very much, Judy. Councillor Wade?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. And page 210 talks about the fact that the report highlights areas for improvement, which include the stock condition survey. So we're aware of that. And the regulator notes that there are already action plans in place. And I think, as Jodie said, context is everything. We are a city council that provides city social housing, one of the few, and we're continuing to do that. And we're also retrofitting our properties as we go along. So I think context is all, and the report highlights where we need to improve and acknowledges that, which is a positive thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
I'd very much like to... it's important that we thank the officers and appreciate the work that they do, and when it's exceptional work, then we really do need to note it. And I wish to thank Jane Wilson for leading on this, because it is a serious piece of work, and it's really important, I think it's been mentioned, for local democracy to be accountable and to be transparent and enable us to see the things that we're doing well and the things we're not doing so well And it's responsible council that does that, that isn't afraid, doesn't shy away or hide away the things that aren't going well. And this is all, this is all transparent. And what we're doing is we're using this as a really important, both managerial and political tool that's going to drive the performance and delivery of services for our residents. It's all about impact, how we make a difference to people's lives in this city. And this is a really important tool to make sure that we're identifying the work, we're a place where we should be putting priorities and delivering on them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Okay, are we happy to move to the recommendation then? So the recommendation is that the Cabinet notes the contents of the attached quarterly performance report for the period 1st of July to 30th of September 2025. Is that agreed? Okay, thank you very much. That is agreed. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. That is the end of this meeting. Thank you for a good meeting.